This week on Inside Government, our conversation revolves around the maritime industry, its contribution to Kenya's economic growth, as well as job creation and the challenges ahead. And we are doing this in the company of Principal Secretary in the State Department of Shipping and Maritime Affairs, Nancy Karigithu. Thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us here. September 9th, when Kenya was declassified, as a high-risk list, was basically a major day for the maritime industry in Kenya. What exactly does it mean?
On the 9th of September this year, Kenyan waters were declassified as a high-risk area. What does that mean? With the advent of piracy, which started in 2009, the international maritime community took actions to be able to protect their assets, particularly their operations, when they are coming into a high-risk area, particularly when our neighboring waters in the Indian Ocean were notorious for piracy incidents with the hijackings of ships alongside the cargo, but most important, alongside with the people who work on board, that's the seafarers. And what's one of the reactions that the international shipping community took, particularly the ship owners, was to come up with a raft of measures that affected the way ships behaved when they were in what now they classified as a high-risk area because of the risks of piracy and the risks of their ships being hijacked. And therefore, the high-risk area became known as where what they called the best management practices had to be performed by the owners. Of course, this meant that when they were transiting the Indian Ocean, and which means therefore that, or rather the last classification meant that the entire of our coastline and parts of our EZ, that's the exclusive economic zone, fell part of that high-risk area. And therefore, any ship operating in that area had to observe the best management practices. And these were instructions printed and distributed by the international shipping community. And this comprises of the associations of owners of ships. We have an association called BIMCO, Intertanko, and many others who had an interest in the ships themselves. What it means is that it added costs to any ship owner transiting the region that is high risk. And the practices meant that either you in terms of operations, the ships took a longer route, circular route, to avoid the area, which meant burning more fuel because that added hundreds of miles, nautical miles, to the journey. Then it also meant that the insurance premiums went higher. It meant that it introduced a new concept of security on board ships, which was totally new because traditionally ships do not carry arms. That's why we've got the merchant navy, and as distinguished from the navies themselves that bear arms. But this time then it meant that one of the best management practice that was introduced was to hire privately armed security guards who were armed, which means therefore we had different cadres, extra cadres of workers on board the ship. It also meant that seafarers were a bit worried of coming into a high-risk area which has been declared so. So sometimes it translated to more wages for them. Generally, the whole process added onto the operational costs of the ship. Where does that come from? Of course, it's loaded on the cargo, and therefore we see higher costs of freight, higher costs of insurance, because as it were, with such a notice that you're entering into a risky area, it meant that then the insurance premiums would go up, because if a ship insurer will underwrite a claim, then of course he's also looking at his costs. So generally, when we've been declassified now, it means a lower burden for the traders, for the end users, for generally for our trade, not just as a country, but for a very big region, because the International Port of Mombasa serves a huge hinterland of landlocked states within the region of Eastern and Central Africa, with a population of over 300 million people. So this is quite a huge burden that has been reduced on them, and therefore we are celebrating this very significant development.
I know there has been a lot of back and forth, between government and other players, to try and improve the situation. So how did we get to a point whereby now we can be declassified as a high-risk area? I mean, what exactly happened in the background?
Okay, like you rightly said, yes, the first BMP, or Best Management Practice booklet, was issued at the height of piracy when it started. There have been revisions. We are now at BMP 5. So the one that really affected us the most was the last one that we've just reviewed, BMP 5, that put the entire coastline and parts of our EEZ waters. And like you said, of course, it put focus on us as a country, as a maritime nation. You will recall that we used to have a thriving cruise shipping industry that was on the up and go. That was very adversely affected because, of course, ships, particularly passenger ships, started avoiding the area. For the rest of it, because shipping must go on and international trade must continue, costs plummeted. They went quite high. And if you look at the bills of lading, they also responded. I mean, the ship owners as carriers responded to that. Now, you will recall that we've walked a very long journey with piracy. You remember the country took conscious steps to protect ourselves, with us joining with AMISON and even our own armed forces taking part in the exercises to secure the coastline. And these are some of the issues that have gone into consideration, because we've been able to show that we took a lot of measures as a country to be able to contribute to the eradication of piracy. You will recall that one of the latest moves we did, or the government did, is to establish the Kenya National Coast Guard Service. And that presence on the waters is very, very important. Also taking part in initiatives, both regional and international, in terms of ensuring the security of the region, hasn't gone unnoticed. If you talk of maritime security, while the actors are at sea, a lot of planning and execution may be happening from land. And we also took a lot of measures in terms of maritime domain awareness through surveillance. And as a country, we've also worked through interagency collaboration, coming up with review of legislation, for example, to set up the border control committees and units in order to break down the silo mentality and approach to to the approach to maritime security. Having a joint operations center where all the agencies share information and expertise, and also cross-pollination of information in terms of understanding what each of us is doing. If you talk of immigration, if you talk of the police, the Kenya Coast Guard now, the Kenya Maritime Authority, the Kenya Ports Authority, there's a lot of information that's there that can help in the planning ahead and giving the country and the players a clear picture of what is happening in the waters, and being able to interdict and also, prevent offenses happening. But of course, at the closure of it is a lot of engagement with our partners at the international level, particularly at the International Maritime Organization, and also, most important, the international shipping community, because at the end of the day, they're the ones trying to strike a balance between the assets, very expensive assets they deploy in the area, but also, most important, the lives and welfare of the people who serve on those assets. That is the seafarers who work on board ships, but also equally important, the protection of the cargo they are carrying in terms of making sure that it reaches the end user, but also importantly that there is no danger to the marine environment in terms of incidents and accidents happening because of insecurity.
How do we take advantage of this new reclassification and the completion of the cruise ship terminal to woo more cruise ship players?
I think the message is out that if you know, one of the most persuasive arguments that we had is that for the last since 2011 we've not had any piracy incidents in these waters, in our area, particularly in the Indian Ocean. Therefore, with the declassification, it begins to give confidence to the players in the industry, and the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And with the new developments that we are having and the measures that we have put in place, we have an opportunity now, which we are taking advantage of, to talk to our partners to be able to come back. Because if you look at the circuits, the tourist circuits, we've got a very good product to offer in this region. And being outside that circuit, well, it's not good for us, because we are very well placed. If you look at the geographical position of Kenya, we've got the infrastructure to support it in terms of the transport modes and the connectivity. If you look at the airports, aviation industry supporting the maritime industry for that. International airport within 20 minutes of an international port. That's very strategic. Then you look at warm weather all year round. Then a very well established, you know, coastal hotel industry. And very close to one of our best products that we've been able to sell very successfully. You know, you could be 2 hours after arriving in Mombasa in a game reserve. So we've got what it takes, and it's up to us to take advantage, and we intend to do that with all that it takes, yeah, to get back into that industry.
One of the hardest hit industries was the maritime industry, whereby, you know, there was a lot of disruptions. What is the situation now on the ground?
Okay, let me say that we had just come from a very successful job creation exercise when COVID-19 hit us. We'd started in partnership with some of our partners to recruit Kenyans. Then boom, COVID happened and they all had to come back because of the closure of boundaries and you know, the airline industry, the airports. But I must say that working together within the international community and with guidance from the international players like the International Maritime Organization, we're beginning to see a semblance of that, because as of the last 1 or 2 months, we're beginning to see liftings beginning slowly. I can safely say or confidently say that the passenger industry is beginning to pick up. If we can go by the kind of recruiting that started slowly but surely. And I want to say that some of the measures that were put in very quickly in consultation, particularly with the health sector, with the guidance from the World Health Organization, are beginning to bear fruit. It's not open days yet, because maybe half the capacity, only half the capacity could be said to be coming back in terms of tonnage, but even then not to full capacity. But then I could say that there is a reason to be positive that it will come back. Of course, it caused a lot of disruption in the let's say freight industry because of placement of containers and equipment and that. But like I said, because international trade must go on, because it's what we live on. We can see that the measures that have been put in place, like vaccination, like the crew change protocols to ensure that the crew are protected, and other measures like extension of certificates, so that in terms of compliance, work can go on. They're beginning to bear fruits, and we have no reason to be pessimistic about the industry pulling back again.
Do we still have Kenyans who are stuck in international waters?
Absolutely not. We brought each and every one of them back home, some of whom we didn't even know were out there, but who reached out to us, and we were able to, even at one time, have a chartered plane bring over 200 of them who'd been in the Caribbean working, and we were able to bring them all back. The good news is that after the measures that we took, also ensuring that they meet the health standards that have been set, as you now understand, all of them have to be vaccinated against COVID, and working within ourselves in government, we managed first of all to secure them coming back, and I'm very grateful and humbled to say that we didn't lose we didn't lose a single one of them, and they came back and integrated back into the community. Now we've started slowly sending them back. And if you recall, last week we had some good news when on 18th of September, one of our very own seafarers, if I may say, Elizabeth Marami, was promoted, and she's working on a cruise vessel. She was promoted to a first officer on board the motor vessel Celebrity Edge, which is working in the United States. And if anything, that sends a very good message to, first of all, Kenyan youth generally, because it tells them that they can succeed if they work hard and they are resilient, and also, keep persistence in the job that they've been given. But also, most importantly, it sends a very good message, because she's become a very good ambassador for young Kenyans, particularly the women, the girls, to be able to join this force, particularly in an area where only 2% of the more than 1 million seafarers worldwide are women. I think that's a very positive message, and we are very happy to say that we've started lifting back our Kenyans. One of the other things that we've been able to do is that COVID brought to us the urgency of taking some of the measures that, rushing through some of the measures that we were working on. For example, one of the issues that came to sharp focus is being able to facilitate the seamless travel of seafarers, either to board, to embark on ships or to come back home. And one of the issues we are doing, and Parliament has been very supportive in this, and I'm hoping that today, as we sit here, the motion to adopt the adoption of the seafarers' identity documents is going to be adopted this afternoon, which means that they are going to get documentation that will be able, they can travel without visas, which makes their work very easy, or rather the transition very easy.
In 2019, you signed an agreement with MSC of Italy to train seafarers, and the agreement was that you'll be having about 5,000 seafarers being trained and being given jobs by MSC. Of course, COVID brought about its own challenges, but is this arrangement still in place?
The training and certification of seafarers globally is controlled through the IMO and the International Labour Organization in terms of measures that every country must put in place and comply with in terms of releasing the end product to be in a manner that's qualified to work. Which means, therefore, that it has placed a burden in us as a country to be able to certify in 81 different certificates to be able to cover the wide range of work on board ships. What do I mean? There is the academic skilling aspect in terms of, let me say that if you train as a marine engineer, for example, you train in the university at degree level, you train at diploma level in the tertiary institutions, but when you finished with the training in terms of academia, that certificate, you own it for life. And that's where the International Maritime Organization and International Labour Organization take over, because the academic doesn't qualify you to get on board the vessel, much as you've trained to work on board, because then you must satisfy the International Maritime Organization, the International Labour Organization, that you are able to translate what you learned mentally into work, which means proficiency must be proven. Competency and proficiency are key pillars. And that is what we have kitted Bandari Maritime Academy to do as a start. Now, the main aim of Bandari is to do the legal finish, to certify these graduates of the academia into work-ready graduates by training them, giving them the courses and the certificates that enable the seafarer, the recruiter, to satisfy himself that they've met the mandatory minimum requirement. We've also been able to also expand our horizon in terms of looking and preparing Bandari to be able to offer courses in the virtual space. So those are some of the new learning curves that we've had, and to also explore partnerships with people who can deliver curriculum in this area.
When Bandari College was renamed the Bandari Center of Excellence, it was reported that it was only offering about 6 courses, and there were plans now with MSc in place to try and upscale these. Has this happened?
We managed to convince Treasury of the need to support Bandari, and that's ongoing. And I'm looking for, and also working with partners like the Kenyan Navy with the kind of equipment they have. That has also been very useful. Taking advantage of whatever assets we have within. For example, working with the county government in terms of firefighting training, being innovative. And like I've said, installing state-of-the-art digital equipment to be able to deliver courses online. That has, I think if there's one thing the COVID pandemic has taught us, is that maybe we were not exploiting all the available assets that we had, and creating partnerships with like-minded institutions and organizations to be able to get that much closer. For example, working with the UNODC to create a facility at it's called Shipping Campus, to be able to simulate life on board and be able to, in terms of boarding, and interdiction, that kind of training. So we've had to do a lot of intensive fast-tracked work to be able to cover a bit of space. It's still work in progress because you have to do so much. We've had to develop curriculum at a very accelerated rate because we cannot just wake up and start training for each and every one of those courses. We must do a curriculum based on the international guidelines, have it certified by the regulator, and all these are incremental steps and building blocks towards the ideal of having Bandari Maritime Academy as a center of excellence, not just in the country but also in the region.
Do you have any idea how many students have been trained through MSc and through Bandari College?
I would say that of the initial 500 that we took, all of them were trained at Bandari with assistance of MSc. I know that we've trained in terms of proficiency and competency courses more than 2,500 at Bandari, and we've now for the first time had a class that has been admitted through the Central Admitting Authority, the COOPS, and they've been on campus for 2 weeks now. So it's exciting time for the academy. Mm-hmm. As the academic programs are going on, being able to also develop even more of the proficiency and competency courses, which are the key that opens the doors into the ship the shipping industry.
How many seafarers have been rendered jobless because of low business volumes caused by COVID-19?
At the height of COVID, we could say that we had almost 2,000 rendered out of work by the pandemic, but we are slowly getting them back. If you see, the most prominent of them is Elizabeth. She's back on ship. And we've got other Kenyans. Let me say that so far we've taken like 200 in the last 1 or 2 months, the ones who are going back. And the process is underway to continue sending even more. We've also been able to sign a memorandum of MOUs with 2 more partners, if you recall, since we spoke, because we've got an MOU with Liberia, which covers a big percentage of world tonnage, which opens even more opportunities. We signed also with a flag, a very rapidly growing flag, which is with the Republic of Palau, which means that those vessels will be open to Kenyans. We are in conversation with many more, and that's the reason that I mentioned that we are in accelerated development of Bandari to be able to attract even more, partnerships, because of course a country will look at the kind of shipping they're doing. If they're into bulk carriers, then are we able to give certificates to the kind of, to the workforce they need? If they are in the tanker industry, are we able to do that? And therefore, we are running a race to be able to certify as many cadres as we can, to be able to expose them to as many jobs as possible.
What is it? Yeah, so anything else that you need to add?
Well, yesterday we had the World Maritime Day under the theme Seafarers at the core of the future of shipping. And usually we celebrate Seafarers Day in June. Now, having a double celebration of seafarers in 1 year just points to the kind of work they do. They are heroines and heroes of modern day living. And I think that we cannot emphasize how much, we value them and the role they play in keeping us and the world commerce moving, because we can't do without them. The same way we can't do without shipping. It's the same way we can't do without seafarers. And that's why, as a country, we are hopeful that we'll play a bigger role, much bigger role, in the seafaring world than we are doing now. And I'm looking forward to being able to send as many young Kenyans to work in this industry, because it's the industry of the future.
Thank you very much. What we have been discussing, the maritime industry, not only here in Kenya, but the world over. And we have been in the company of Principal Secretary in the State Department of Shipping and Maritime Affairs, Nancy Karigithu. You have been watching Inside Government. My name is O'Brien Kimani. We do this again next week. Until then, have a good time.